Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay, I'll take it from here.
Hey, you forgot your seat!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and I love this time of year. That's right, we're getting into the later part of March and April. That's the best time to be in New Orleans, and it's the best time of year for me for sports because you have a bunch of them overlapping, and we're going to talk about a lot of them right now. And let's start with the Pelicans because I haven't mentioned them in a few weeks, and they don't deserve to be mentioned, quite frankly. But they are our home team, and they're still in the playoff run, believe it or not. They're only a half a game out of that play-in spot after beating the Rockets just a couple nights ago. They lost to the Rockets in a heartbreaker in back-to-back games against the same team, but they came back and beat them. So they're 34-37. Right now, like I said, they're only a half a game out of the play-in games, you know, those games that the teams from 7 to 10 are going to play, but they're still 12th out of the 15 teams in the West. Hopefully they get a run. They've only got 11 games left, so there's not a lot of time. But look at this. They're literally only 2.5 games out of being not even in the play-in games. You'd be from the 6th seed and only 4 games out from being home court advantage. That's how many teams are bunched up from 4 to 12. There's 9 teams sitting there, and they all have a chance to either be out of the playoffs or have home court advantage, which is crazy. Also, let's move on to other basketball. How about the LSU women's? How about this team? They've already had 2 NCAA tournament games, and they won them both convincingly. They beat Hawaii by 23 points in the first game, 63-40. And then they took, or 73-50, excuse me. And then they took the Michigan Wolverines out by 24 points the other day. That's amazing, 66-42. Remember last year they got popped out by a Big Ten team. They walloped this one this time. So congratulations to them. This team is 30-2. And how about what Angel Reese did against the Wolverines? 25 points, 24 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Incredible game for her. She is a first-team All-American. Congratulations to her. Next up in the Sweet 16, they have the second-seeded Utah Utes, and that's going to be a dandy. Look forward to that. And how about the Saints, man? The Saints! We were all burying them a while ago. Now, you see they got Derek Carr. We already talked about that last week. And that same day we had the show last week, they re-signed Michael Thomas. That is a big deal. If he's healthy, that's a big if, but even bigger than that to me. They got a running back last year that led the NFL in touchdowns. 17 touchdowns he got. What a remarkable feat. But this is a guy that was unsung coming out of BYU. But I remember when I watched him, there he is at BYU with Taysom Hill. But I remember when he ran for 210 yards in his last game at BYU. I watched that game against Wyoming. And this guy is not only a touchdown vulture, he is a guy that has a lot of burst, and he gets around. I'm looking forward to seeing him teamed up with Alvin Kamara. That's going to be very interesting. And also you got Derek Carr now and Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, who had a great rookie year. That's a lot of talented skill positions, and you got a lot of good combinations there as well. How about free agency? They had this time last week, they only had 1 defensive tackle on the entire roster. Onyemata was gone. Everybody else was gone. Now they just signed 2 big ones. Kalen Saunders from Kansas City, you see right there from the Chiefs, and also Nathan Shepard from the Jets. That's two guys that are going to be stuffing up the inside. And that's exactly what this team needs with their talented defensive ends. Also, cornerback Lonnie Johnson was also just signed as well from Tennessee Titans. And moving forward, how about the NCAA tournament? We know this is this time of year. March Madness, we all love it. The second 16 seed in the history of the game won this last week against Purdue. That's right, Fairleigh Dickinson was so much fun to watch in that game. They beat the big guy right there, the 7'4". They had a great game there, and they had a nice round of 32 game against Florida Atlantic. They ended up falling in that game after a great comeback. Florida Atlantic has been my sleeper the entire year, and plus the NCAA tournament. Look for them to possibly keep doing damage as it goes forward. Also, number 2, Arizona, even before that game, was beaten by Princeton, who's now in the Sweet 16. How about Princeton in the Ivy League? They blew out Missouri in the second game. But how about this, the Arkansas Razorbacks? LSU even beat them in their bad year. That was their first SEC win. It was against 9th-ranked Arkansas. Arkansas fell off the map for a while. But now their coach is taking his shirt off. How about that? They beat number 1 seed Kansas. And our guy who's been on this show, you know him well. You know, my man Musselman. He got his shirt off and he got started celebrating after this great win. So 2 number 1 seeds are already gone, including the NCAA champion Kansas Jayhawks, who won, by the way, last year right here in the Superdome. And they won that game against North Carolina, but they're already out of the tournament in the second round. And how, you know, baseball is coming down. College is already playing full swing right now. But how about the World Baseball Championship? You look at this roster of Americans, man, the number 9 hitter, Trey Turner, the number 9 hitter, is one of the better hitters in Major League Baseball, and he beat Venezuela to beat them on a grand slam in the 9th inning on Saturday night. I watched that game, and then they come back on Sunday. He hits 2 more home runs to beat powerful Cuba. They routed them 14-2. So tonight, they will play Japan. You see that. That will be a huge championship. World Championship baseball has become very big, and they're going to play Japan, who's a really, really good team. You know they got Shohei Ohtani, and they're phenomenal. But they had a big win last night in a thriller over Mexico, so look forward to that. And LSU gymnastics, I got to talk about them because we're going to have 2 or 3 of their best gymnasts coming in the next couple weeks. Whenever they get eliminated from the NCAA championship tournament, which starts in about 10 days, this past weekend they finished 3rd in the SEC championships, but they're 6th ranked in the entire country, and they've got some great gymnasts out there. Looking forward to having them on, but they start in about 10 days. Like I said, whenever they get eliminated, that Tuesday following, we'll have a gymnast or 2 and maybe even 3 on this show. And also, how about LSU spring football? They're in full swing right now. They're looking forward to a lot of big things in Brian Kelly's second year. And Tulane is as well. Tulane coming off that 9th-ranked team, which was 12-2 last season. So I look forward to seeing what they got to do. I got to mention LSU baseball. They almost swept Texas A&M in their first SEC series. They won the first 2, and then they had a comeback loss where Texas A&M came back and beat them to salvage one of the games in the series. But LSU is still number 1 in the entire country, and they are rolling right now. And let's go. I got to mention the NOLA Gold. We just had their GM, Ryan Fitzgerald, on just this past week. Well, they were 0-3. Right? Well, now they've won 2 games by an average of 24 points. Or 24 points. This was 37-14 right here. The week before, they won 31-5. Actually, I should say they've been winning about 34 average points because they have been rolling right now. And congratulations to Ryan and the NOLA Gold. This team has gotten 2 in a row. That was Utah this past week, and then the week before, they beat New York, as we mentioned last week. But we have a great show for you. This is Loyola Day. I don't ever really give a lot of love for Loyola. Last year I had Stacey Hollowell on when his team was 37-1 and won the national championship for Loyola in the NAIA for the first time in 75 years. Well, how about this? They got a new coach because Stacey went on to Ole Miss to be with Kermit Davis up there. And then Donald Reyes comes in and wins he wins the conference championship. And then they went to the NCAAs and they took it on the chin. But they had a great season with all new team just about. So congratulations. We're all going to have him with the athletic director, Brett Simpson, right there. You see him. He is a 3-time athletic director of the year. This guy has done great things, and it's not just basketball. Baseball has been unbelievable lately. And we're going to mention all the sports because they got 20 teams there, and most of them are doing fantastic. So congratulations to them. And you know the Louisiana Derby. You know I love the horses. This week is the Louisiana Derby. We usually have Tom Amos on. He's the biggest trainer we have down here in New Orleans, and he's been in a lot of Kentucky Derbies. Well, we have a guy that works at Churchill Downs, and now he also works part of the year right here at the fairgrounds. And this guy has been around the race game for a quarter of a century, really 30-plus years. So I can't wait for him. Joe Kristufek is going to be great. This guy is a handicapper. He also broadcasts all the stuff for the fairgrounds. He does a fabulous job, but he knows the horses inside and out, and he's going to preview this great race we have on Saturday, March 25th. So also him, and I can't wait for my next guest also, Ingrid Lucia. What a great story this woman has. I cannot wait to talk to her. She's fabulous. She's big in New York with the Flying Neutrinos. She was big in New Orleans. She's been all around the country and most of the world as well. And this is going to be a great story about a great singer with a great story to tell and a redemption project there as well. But I cannot wait for this show. It's Primetime Sports. You know we're not just sports. We're sports and entertainment. We'll see you in a second.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, this is a little bit of an unusual show. We haven't given Loyola the love they deserve. That's a local team here, like Tulane, like UNO. We talk about them a lot, but Loyola has done some amazing things. I've had Stacy Hollowell on this show, their former basketball coach, twice. I had him on last year when they had that remarkable 37-1 season. It was a magical year, a magical run. They won the national championship, and I had him on a few years before that when he got the job. I've had Mike Girlando on this show. Mike was the AD, the athletic director, and the head basketball coach at the same time. Well, now we have a guy that took Mike's place, and we have a guy that took Stacy's place. And they're both here, and they've done remarkable things. Brett Simpson is the athletic director. He's a local guy that went to St. Martin's, and he went to Loyola and pretty much never left, except for a little stint in college when he was doing some stuff with the Zephyrs. But now he's the athletic director. He's the three-time athletic director of the year in the conference and a one-time national athletic director of the year. And quite frankly, they should have been two. I don't know how he didn't get it last year when the baseball team was rolling. The basketball team had an unprecedented season, and all the other sports, which we'll touch on, are killing it. They have 20 sports, if I'm not mistaken, and they are rolling. Donald Reyes is the basketball coach. I met him 3 weeks ago. We had dinner with John Brady, the former LSU coach, and Mike Girlando. And Brett Simpson, I've known on and off for the last 5, 6, 7 years. They're both great guys doing great things here. And welcome to the show. First time for both of you guys,
yeah,
Brett.
Man.
Good to see you,
Thanks for
brother.
having us.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Donald, good to see you
Yes,
as well.
Sir. Good to see you.
I'm going to start with Brett because I believe he's probably the guy that hired you. Brett, first of all, let's talk about you real quick.
Right.
How did you get into this? Because people out there, athletic director is one of the sexiest jobs you can have, period.
Yep.
I mean, I used to want to run. I wanted to be a general manager or an athletic director.
Right.
General manager obviously is in the pros. Athletic directors do it in college. But as a kid growing up, there's going to be some high school kids watch this.
Yep.
How do you get this job?
So it's funny you say that because my dream job was always going to be the general manager of the Cubs. I'm a
Yes.
huge Cubs fan, and I'm going to Sloan Park this weekend. Arizona going to catch some
my next guest is a biggest Cubs fan. He's from Chicago, so when
awesome.
we leave,
I want to compare notes with him.
Right on.
And you know that's kind of the. And then when I got to school, I thought I wanted to coach, right? And as I made my way along my career, and I even had some people say, you know, you'd be a really good administrator, which I don't know what they were talking bad about my coaching skills.
Right, exactly.
But I seem to always be getting, so I seem to always be getting pushed that way toward administration, and I was kind of part-time coaching at Loyola and doing a lot of external affairs.
And you played baseball at Loyola, and you played basketball, I know, in high school, and you're an athlete. You played. Did you play basketball? No, at St. Martin's.
St. Martin's, I played for Coach Hernandez and Gio both.
Both Loyola.
Both. So I'm fortunate that those guys kind of came in and gave me their.
Jerry Hernandez, let me just say this, deserves some props.
No
that
doubt.
guy, Jerry, I don't know if you're watching. You're one of the greatest coaches in New Orleans history, period.
Without question.
And he is, and so is Mike Girlando.
He took great care of me, and Gio took great care of me, and I think Gio was the one who sat me down one day, and we had expanded a little bit in the department, had a full-time baseball assistant, and he basically says, I need you to focus on what we're actually paying you to do, and that's the administrative piece. And that was in 2012, and you know, I felt like I was just always getting pushed that way, so I just accepted it and adapted and rolled with it, and just really focused my efforts.
Is 2012 when you became athletic director?
2012 is when I stopped coaching baseball, and when Gio came to me and said, I need you to focus on what you're. And 2 years later, I became the athletic director. And I do want to say too, like people ask all the time, how'd y'all get so good, you know, when you took over? Well, a lot of it has to do with I always say Gio was coaching and being the athletic director.
It's a hard thing to combine, man.
We got really good at basketball when the AD didn't have to coach the basketball team anymore.
Right,
we got
right.
good in a lot of other sports when the basketball coach wasn't messing around being the AD too. So I'm grateful for that. And Gio, you know, kind of teed it up for Stacy and I to take over, and we just ran with it.
I want to get into Stacy and Gio in a second because I want to talk about stories, but I want to get to you because your story is one of the most fabulous I've ever heard. For real. You were manager, team manager with John Brady, who was a frequent guest of the show. When he retired, he became my basketball analyst. I like to think that I helped him go along the media. That's the best shot we could get. But that's John in the middle, and that's you on the lower left.
Yes.
And the person taking the picture, we got to get some filters on this thing. But the fact is, that's where you started, right?
Yes.
And I want you to just tell the rest. You don't have to go job by job, but just kind of tell how you got that gig, and then now you're a head coach of the team in your first year, by the way, that won the conference championship.
Yes, sir. Definitely. That photo right there was from 2005, 2006, if I'm not mistaken.
The 2006 team was the Final Four
yes,
team.
that was from the Final Four team.
Right.
Hurricane Katrina obviously hit. You know, I kind of went off to Baton Rouge where I thought I was getting away from school, and Katrina happened. Honestly, saw a flyer on the wall one day at LSU. Grabbed it down, went in with an interview for about 100 people, and only 3 guys made it.
That's literally
season.
How they did that?
That's literally how they did it
That's
back in the day.
very interesting.
There was no social media. There was no posts. It was flyers on the wall.
That's pretty darn cool, man. That is.
Yes.
Without that flyer, who knows, right?
Who knows?
Right,
who knows?
right.
Was fortunate enough to obviously join that staff and, you know, embrace that culture. And 05, 06 is what I always say tricked me into the business. We're flying around. I'm at the Final Four.
I was at all those games, by the way.
This is my first experience. I'm like, I want to do this. I can coach basketball for the rest of my life.
How magical was that run?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I was an agent at the time, and I was in Jacksonville, and I always tell John, you better be sending Daryl Mitchell bouquets every Christmas, because without that crazy 3 he hit against Texas A&M again in Jacksonville, he made his name, the coach did, the next weekend when they beat Duke and J.J. Redick, and they beat Texas and LaMarcus Aldridge, and then they go to the Final Four. But without Mitchell hitting that shot, none of y'all are in Atlanta.
Nope.
And I was living there, and I was at every one of those games and every event. It was phenomenal.
Absolutely. But, you know, been fortunate and blessed to be coaching now for 16 years at a bunch of different institutions. But all praises go to, obviously, Coach Brady. He helped me get 2 degrees, my undergraduate at LSU as well as my master's at Arkansas State.
You followed in Arkansas State, right?
Yes.
When he left us.
I was, back then, you know, they didn't have the video coordinators, all the roles and positions they have now. So you're in school, but you're doing a full-time job at the same time.
Right.
But unbelievable experiences, and I really, truly feel like that's what's helped me, you know, each step of my journey, you know, along the coaching tree. Had a stop at Tulane University under different roles, under 2 different head coaches for some time. So spent a lot of time uptown.
Talk about that. That's wasn't just a stop. It was like 7 years, wasn't it? Ed Conroy is a dear friend of mine, and he was the coach. That's the second coach. That's you with Mike Dunleavy. There's Ed Conroy right there.
Mm-hmm.
Both those guys have been on the show many times, and I love them. But talk about that run, because that's kind of what you became a kind of a protege to those guys to where you are right now, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, it really started the relationship that you see sitting right next to each other as well. So all credit goes to that opportunity. Unbelievable time. But honestly, growing up here in New Orleans, I always said it, but Loyola University is 9.5 miles from the house that I grew up in.
Wow.
Being a local at John Ehret High School. So
love it.
Couldn't have asked for a better situation.
It's 3 miles from where I grew up. Actually, 2.5. But that's crazy.
Yeah. But Coach Ed Conroy gave me an opportunity to just come in and do what I could do and help out in certain areas that I, you know, could afford to. And as a full-time, you know, staff member, and I kind of worked my way up. I did every job you can possibly think of, much like I would like to say that Brett has, you know, in his own particular field. And I feel like it's truly helped me prepare me for everything I'm experiencing now.
I tell people in TV, or just when I say do everything you can, because when you become the man, you appreciate every little thing that the people do. I'm talking about, like, you know, get a camera or do. But you've been a manager, you've been a video coordinator, you've been an assistant coach, you've swept floors, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
You've done it all, and that's what, when you're at a school like Loyola, you got to do it all. Mike Giorlando is a dear friend, and he's told me all the things that go into the athletic director job that maybe you don't have to deal with at LSU or at a bigger school, because you have to deal with getting players a different way. And your school is not cheap. It's a private school. It's a phenomenal school. You got great journalism, you got great music, it's a great university. But the fact is, what did you see in this guy right here? Because That's a sexy job after they go 37-1. All of a sudden, it's like, I'm sure you fielded a lot of calls and you had a lot of options. What made you decide on this guy?
Well, the voicemail filled up real quick.
I bet it did.
When the word got out. But the one thing I loved about Donald right out the gate is that, we run real lean in athletics. It's like me, like you talked about, me, a sports information director, assistant AD, and a coordinator who we let mess around, coach basketball with him a little bit. Andrew Fava, who was a star on our team.
Oh, Fava, yeah, from Florida.
Yeah. So from a support staff standpoint, we don't have a lot of it. So the fact that he had a lot of experience doing everything was perfect, because we knew if we had someone come in who like maybe a big Division I coach and hadn't been exposed to that would be a struggle. The fact that he was with Gio for a couple months, at Loyola before he made it over to Tulane.
Yes, that's right. Stacy said the same thing last night. Y'all were together a couple months, right?
And so that kind of, Stacy reminded me of that when we were talking after, and Gio as well. And just like him being at Tulane for 7 years, right? Like knew the academic piece, being local, growing up locally on the West Bank, and then being at Tulane and being around, and then also going away, right? So I don't know if he remembers this, but Donald, I talked to him about maybe being assistant athletic director for us at one point several years ago, but he really wanted to coach, right? So went off to the Bethune-Cookman, coached there was at Corpus Christi. With Steve Lutz, who just got that big job at Western Kentucky.
By the way, your Corpus, that team plays basketball the way it's supposed to be played. So I know you had a role in that one. I watched them this year's tournament. Yep. Remember they were in last year's tournament, and I love you were holding up something. Yeah, that's them right there, right?
Yep, that was
March
a special
Man. There's
year.
you holding up the Southland Conference. That's the tournament trophy.
Yes, the tournament trophy that allowed us to go.
I got chills right now. I do.
So.
But yeah.
So just that diverse experience where he's been at home, knows the landscape, knows the academics, just being familiar with us a little bit, and at Tulane, and then going off and doing things at other places was a big thing. And then he owes Coach Lutz a steak dinner, because man, when I've done this a lot, like we've done a lot of searches, but I've never had someone give a reference like Coach Lutz.
It was glowing.
He basically said to me, he goes, if you don't hire Donald Reyes, you're going to regret it for the rest of your career. I was like, I've never had anyone.
Dude, I got chills, man. And I felt that way when I met you, honestly, right. Donald, because I met you 3 weeks ago or so. We had dinner with Gio, and I left this. I've bragged about you literally for most of those last 3 weeks. When people come, you have a presence about you. I can just tell you right now, I don't have a crystal ball, but if I did, you're going to be a hugely successful coach because of the person you are. You got integrity. I can see that. You're always thinking about players. You talk about the guy from Shaw, and my thought process is when you're at a Loyola, and it's no offense, everybody wants to go D1, right? I mean, I know this is a fact. What's your challenge in getting those players to come? Because you didn't have much in the cupboard. You had, I think, some guys return, but only one, that Jalen Galloway, that you would say, hey, this guy, I know he's going to be great. But you still followed up the year that it was a championship year with a conference championship with your own dude. So how do you get this, and how do you manage to get them to buy into you and Loyola?
Great question. And to be honest, just be myself.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of not so cliche, but it really is at the end of the day. I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and I always tell my guys this, and actually I'm pretty sure Coach Brady joked about this. I've had so many experiences that I've learned, honestly, what not to do more so than what to do. So I know if I can stay away from the negative things that
I can ultimately with Coach Brady, because that's he'll admit he's done some stuff while he's coaching that he probably wish he hadn't done, right?
Yeah. But really, honestly, just looking for people that's kind of like-minded like myself, and that's honestly what was most attractive to me about the opportunity to come in and lead the program. They had obviously some success recently, and I was interested in continuing that and obviously doing it at another level, which is obviously a tough task in itself. But just finding like-minded individuals, student athletes that are appreciative of the opportunity and that value an athletic opportunity as well as an academic opportunity. And what better place to do it than home here in New Orleans? You have the ability to be uptown, you have the ability to be downtown, you can be on the West Bank, you name it. You kind of have anything that you want access to. And that's a big selling point for us. And I think, honestly, we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg.
Well, you are. And I'm going to say something about that because that's Mejia hitting that shot and that celebration. I guess that was your championship, the season. But I'm going to say this. I thought I had been to Loyola last year, but I was corrected, and I went to a couple of Loyola games with Brady and Gio, but they were at Tulane, and that magical 37 one year. But this year, I went to the tournament game that y'all hosted, and I believe the last time I was there, because I was looking around, I'm like, this doesn't look the same. They had like the two courts you had like a net in between, and now you have these stands that were packed. I mean, packed. I mean, I was blown away. I'm like, this is Loyola. And then you had the VIP thing up in the second floor. I'm like, this place has come a long way in the last 7-8 years. And I'm like thinking, that's got to be part of your vision. And I want you to talk about the whole athletic program and that in itself.
Yeah, I mean, we've had tremendous amount of support from donors, right? Like, so we were able to transform the gym that was built when we didn't have athletics. I don't know if people realize that Loyola didn't have athletics from 72 to I think 91.
So was it built just for students to play? I mean, like a field center? Yeah, rec center, right. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny too, like there was no thoughts of hosting even like tournaments. So there's like really no concession stand. There was no seats or anything like that. There was just strictly rec center.
That's what it was, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We've had to retrofit a lot of stuff. So, you know, we had great support from some donors, and we've been able to like redo the lights. We've put in some seating, you know, legitimate chair back, bent bleacher style seating, because before we had the ability, we would roll portable bleachers and tip them over. And if you've been in there before, you'd know that the floor looked like spaghetti lines all over the place. So we really be able to put some branding on the floor and make it you know, more like a college gym. And then most recently, we added like a Hall of Fame room, right, which is like a great hospitality area.
Yes, I saw
suite.
it.
So we got to be one of the few NAI schools that are selling VIP packages for $125 a pop for.
I'm gonna say this for them people out there, it's worth it.
Yep.
It's worth it. It was phenomenal, and I was blown away. I mean, literally. I mean, you've done an amazing job with all that. So
we do have some plans in the future. You know, Donald's group and Kelly's group and our volleyball and our sports medicine are still in racquetball courts, like refurbished racquetball courts. So the next phase of renovation for the facility is going to be really to like blow out old racquetball courts, put 2 floors, double our space, get some legit locker rooms for our student athletes, a legit sports medicine area. We got to do something about the weight room and make it bigger, because we now have 300 student athletes. When I took over, it was only like 140. So we've got some big plans.
Wow, and you have 20, right?
20 sports, yeah.
20 sports. This is a time while I give you these gifts from Task Performance and Shays Delachey's. This is where I want you to kind of gush about some of the other sports that are doing well, and then, you know, some of those 20 sports. I don't have time for 20 sports to talk, but yeah, just tell me what's happening over there. Here's a shirt for you, Task Performance.
Thank you so much.
If you haven't had one, when you put that on, it'll be a game changer. All I wear is Task underwear, Task socks, Task pants, Task shirts. That's all my closet is, except for dress stuff. And even then, they have golf shirts too. So it's the softest stuff. I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor and I give them out. That's how good they are. And Shays Delachey's, right there on Maple between Carrollton and Broadway. Hey, right around the corner from you guys. In fact, the other one on St. Charles is only about a mile or so too. That's on Delachey's and St. Charles. So you can go to either one of those. But talk about the sports as you sign the ball, because I've got to get going. But here you go.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Obviously, women's basketball had another great year. She's been our gold standard for a long time.
Yeah,
Coach
phenomenal,
Kelly Kennedy.
Kelly Kennedy. I got some good shots there. There she is.
Yeah.
I love that shot.
That's a great one. She's been great. Our baseball team has really transformed recently. You know, we hosted a regional a couple years ago. Last year we were, you know, extra innings away from in the regional final to go to the World Series in Lewiston, Idaho.
I got calls from Fletcher the entire time.
Yeah, you know, we've never dreamed about having a baseball team going to Lewiston, but I feel like we're on the cusp of that. We're ranked 15th in the country. Women's tennis is 14th in the country. Women's golf is 10th in the country right now. So
you're rolling, man.
Yeah,
you're rolling,
and
it's been
really a lot of fun.
So do you enjoy your job?
Yes.
You enjoy your job?
Love it.
Every day?
Every day.
There it is. People that are passionate about what they do. Ingrid Lucia, who's going to be on later, she loves singing. She loves performing. She's coming up. But guess what? Our next guest, we're going to switch from balls to animals. We're going to talk horses, because the fairgrounds is wrapping up their season here on Saturday. That's when the Louisiana Derby is. And let me give you some history here. Louisiana Derby is a feeder to the Kentucky Derby. It's where a lot of the races, Lecomte and the Risen Star, they become Kentucky Derby horses, and the winner of this will definitely be in the Derby, and they might even have 3 or 4 or 5 in this race on Saturday. They'll be in the Kentucky Derby. We have a man that works the Churchill Downs in Kentucky, and off season he comes over here in New Orleans, and he is the guy every trainer and owner said you got to get him on the show. He knows everything about all the horses that we're going to have, so we're going to talk to him. Joe Kristufek, I hope I got that right. He's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
The owners of the Delachey's Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachet, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachet, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, instead of talking about athletes, we're talking about animals, the best, most majestic animals in the world, in my opinion. That's right, the horses. And fairgrounds here in New Orleans, we do it right. And the Louisiana Derby, like I said, going from the last segment, is a feeder to the Kentucky Derby, but it's a great horse race in its own mind. The Comp, the Risen Star, and now Louisiana Derbies are jewels here in New Orleans. And we have a guy that's been at Churchill Downs for years, and he's still there, but he's here now from December through April. And we're lucky to have him. He grew up in Chicago, and then he got a bug for the horses up there at Arlington. And his name is Joe Kristufek, and he is an analyst. He's also a handicapper. He does everything but maybe sweep the floors over there, and he might do that at the fairgrounds too. But here he is. Welcome to the show for the first time, Joe. Good to see you, buddy.
It's great. It's great to be here.
How you doing?
Great to talk racing. Any opportunity I can. I know you love the fairgrounds.
I do.
And,
I do.
Hopefully, by the time I leave, you'll love it even more.
I've been to Churchill a few times. I've been mostly to Keeneland because a good friend of mine's father was the president for years. I don't think he's doing it anymore. But I've also lived in D.C., so I went to Preakness and Maryland, and I've been to Saratoga too. I'm not an expert. I love the pageantry. I just love the being there thing, and I always have to get tips from others. I'm not studying the thing, although I am a kind of guy that likes to study other sports for gambling. I'll leave it to people that know more than me, and that'd be somebody like you.
As long as you're not making the walk of shame to the cash machine while you're at the track, then you're good.
No.
Because this is a gambling game.
Yes.
We love the pageantry. We love the drinks, the hats, dressing up, enjoying the atmosphere. We love the beauty of the animal, the powerful thoroughbreds, but at the end of the day, we'd like to leave with more money than we came with.
Yeah, and that's the goal. And I'll say if I lose 100, it's
entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's entertainment. I will never go more than that. I'm not the big better, but if I'm up, I might press, right? I mean, if I got lucky and and then I'll usually lose that. But I mean, at least I'm not going home with losing money. But let's talk about you real quick. So before we get into what's happening this weekend, which is the greatest race, I think, in Louisiana every year, Louisiana Derby. You came up, and it's an interesting story. You're from Chicago, but I'm going to let you take it from there, how you got the bug and how you got to where you are now. Because let me say this before I say it. Tom Amos, a well-known trainer here. He's had Derby horses, Kentucky Derby. But everybody I talked to about who should I get on for this show, your name came up first, all of them. And then I see you on Fletcher's show. I love Fletcher Mackel, and you were on there, and I'm like, okay, this is the guy. I got to call him. So now that I've told people who you are, now you can say how you got there.
This game is all built on hope and passion, whether you do the job that I do or the job that Tom does as a trainer. And I really didn't have much exposure to horse racing in grade school or high school. I really caught the bug in college when I worked at the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago, and I went to Columbia College, an art school, also in downtown Chicago, and the universe popped, the Jackson Street OTB, right in between my work and school.
Off-track betting, for those that don't know.
First one that ever opened up in the city of Chicago. So I started popping in there. You're always looking for something to do after work, on lunch, on breaks. And you're either born with a little bit of gamble in your blood or you're not. I was born with gamble in my blood. Love baseball, the statistics.
Did you bet on baseball?
No, well, not when I was 7 years old.
No, not 7, but 7. Man, how about when you were 20? Because that's when I
bet on
first
football more.
Football,
It was just more easily accessible.
Summer of '85, I won a ton betting baseball, and that's the first thing I ever bet. And
as I got older, I dabbled for sure.
Right.
But you're born with gamble in your blood. You like the statistics on the back of baseball cards, batting average, home runs, RBIs. And once I started to, get a little exposure to horse racing, it's kind of like figuring out a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's an intellectual game. You can play your favorite name, number, color, play the game completely based on luck, and do okay that way as well. But there's an ego that goes into it when you pick the winner of a race or you pick the winning exact.
It's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a sport.
You got it right.
It's either one of two teams. There's a lot of horses. Some have odds that are astronomical, but you get one if you pick one horse and it wins instead of 4 or 5, and that's a great feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. And back in those days, there was no Twitter, there was no social media, so I got my foot in the door at Arlington Park. I worked guest relations. They would have the meetings in the morning, and I wouldn't be paying attention. I'd be reading my racing form, figuring out my bets for the day. But got to know Phil Georgieff, Jerry Galatano, Dave Zenner, Dave Sirico, just guys that worked on television, guys that worked at local newspapers. The newspaper industry was so different back then.
Yes, it was.
Got my foot in the door and just worked my way up. This guy knows his stuff. He's pretty good on TV. Started doing morning line odds. Did a lot of writing.
Yeah, and you're a jack of all trades.
Worked my way up at Hawthorne, Sportsman's, Arlington. Those are my home tracks. And
yes.
Landed at Churchill Downs in 2015.
That had to be the best feeling in the world. I mean, that's like the holy grail. I mean, you land at Churchill and you're still at Churchill and you're here in the off season. How did that come about that you came to New Orleans? And as like I said, a seasonal guy.
Yeah, so back in college, I looked up on the TV screen one day, saw a guy in the paddock with a microphone and a suit and tie, and he's getting paid to give his picks on the air. So I'm like, that's what I want to do. So that kind of led into me getting the jobs in Chicago. Did a lot of freelance work over the years. And then the racing analyst job opened up at Churchill Downs. And a friend of mine who worked at Churchill gave me a call and said, are you available, to come and work here seasonally? Mm-hmm. It was just a seasonal job for me the first 3 or 4 years. I was going back and forth between Louisville and Chicago. And then the fairgrounds job opened, and it's not a perfect, I'm still at Churchill Downs in the end of November when the meet opens here.
You just missed Thanksgiving. That's it. You missed that big opening.
Crossover.
Right? Yeah.
But this job opened up. It's like you get to winter in New Orleans. I had spent a little bit of time here, but nothing extensive.
Yeah.
Got the job.
Better winter here than in Chicago, unless you love snow. I mean,
for sure. And in 2018, so this is my 6th season here. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I get to work the Louisiana Derby, the Kentucky Derby, and I get to get paid, to do something that I love.
You love, and that seems to be the theme today about people, what they do. And I mean, sometimes you just do it because of a job. But I don't have a ton of time, so let's talk about the Derby. 1996 was the last time that the Louisiana Derby winner, Grindstone, won the Kentucky Derby. Now, I know we've had some participants in the Louisiana Derby that won by default the Kentucky Derby last 2 years. We don't need to get that, but they didn't win actually, but other one got disqualified, so they won, right?
Mandaloun, Country House.
And Country House. But we also had last year a horse that finished, what's the horse last year?
Epicenter won the Louisiana Derby.
Yes.
Should have won the Kentucky Derby.
Should have won the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
But that was just last year. That was Asmussen's horse, Steve's.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the 3 because we only have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Instant Coffee, the favorite. Tell me about that horse and the trainer.
He won the LeCompte Stakes, which was one of the preps here in New Orleans. Brad Cox has got a lot of Kentucky
Cox, big name.
Derby contenders this year. Instant Coffee's one of them.
Yep.
He's been rested from the LeCompte up into the Louisiana Derby. Distance shouldn't be a question. Horse is not only good physically, he's got a great mind.
Right.
But I said it earlier, Scott, this is a gambling game. Instant Coffee's 2-1 on the morning line. Is he the most likely winner? Probably. But if you're betting the race, do you want to bet the favorite in a field of 11 or 12 horses? I'm always looking for value somewhere.
I'm always looking for trainers, too. Pletcher has got a horse, obviously, and so does Asmussen again. He's got Disarm, and then there's something Barnes. What was
King's Barnes.
King's Barnes. I can't get it. Yeah, those are 2. And give me 30 seconds about them.
Kings Barnes is undefeated. Tampa Bay is where he's been based this winter. Todd Pletcher's won the race 4 times. He knows what kind of horses to send here, but this horse has only run twice, a little bit inexperienced. Disarm for Steve Asmussen, who had Epicenter last year. He's another upstart horse who ran second at Oaklawn Park last out, broke his maiden at Saratoga last summer. Steve's very high on the horse. He should take a major step forward. He's going to provide value, but my bomb in the race is Baseline Beater. It might be the longest shot in the field.
What is it?
He's 20-1 on the morning line, but he might be 30-1.
Okay.
That's my long shot.
I mean, you'd have nothing to lose on that one. Listen, I love your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have you. And I'm going to say this. The moment you get back to town next year, I want to have you back on.
Okay.
I want to talk about the entire season coming up.
Sounds good.
We give gifts. Task performance.
Oh, this is awesome.
Shirt. You're going to be the most comfortable shirt you wore.
Sweet.
And here's before you leave to go back to Louisville, go to this restaurant, Chez de la Chaise. And I got to go, but great to see you, man. I appreciate you.
You got it.
Let's
Thanks,
go.
Scott.
Hey, we got him. We got to go right now. But next, coming up, we got Ingrid Lucia. Wait till you hear her story. The singer, New Orleans, New York, coming up next, right here on Primetime Sports. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. What a fun show it's already been. But I'm going to tell you this, we're going to switch gears. Like I've said many times, this is Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander, but it's sports and entertainment. You know we've had 100 musicians, local musicians, some other ones that have been visiting to play here in New Orleans. But we have one that's big in New York City and big in New Orleans, and she's been all around the world. Born in San Francisco, moved here at the age of 1, but she's had a great story, and she is a well-known and fun musician. Ingrid Lucia, I showed you the book the time Carnival Tom Johnson was on, because he's friends with her too, and she actually helped broker that deal to get him on the show, the Mardi Gras show we had. But here she is right here. I can't wait to chat with her. Ingrid Lucia.
How are you?
Good to see you, darling.
Good to see you again.
Put this book up. You have 13 albums.
I do.
13 albums. And this book right here, The Big Time.
Yeah.
The Big Time. I showed it about a month ago. I read about a third of it last night.
Ooh,
from way late when I stopped working till I don't even want to tell you how early it was in the morning, but it wasn't that long ago. But no, it's thrilling, and it's
nice.
It's raw, it's honest, and you have a story to tell, and it's well written, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate that.
My dad was a writer, and I looked at this thing, and I'm like, this is really well written.
Thank you.
So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about you as a musician, okay? Because we love to celebrate people in New Orleans and what they do here, and let people know, because I mean sometimes you got to ask somebody.
Right.
And give me your history about where you grew up, where you played, your family, and what they did, and how you got to do what you're doing now.
Well,
it's an open book. You got the floor.
It is an open book.
Right.
I am. I'm one of 6 kids who, in order to keep them out of trouble, my dad said we're starting a family band, and so we started playing in Jackson Square every day from 11 to 3. We were homeschooled. My dad built homemade rafts and paddle wheel boats that went up and down the Mississippi River, so we lived on boats growing up. And,
wow. Okay.
My father was, a big adventurer, so we took that band and we went to Mexico every year, and we learned from all the street performers. We learned from guys who were going to Preservation Hall, like Craig Klein. Certain players would teach us, on the way to their gig, and that's how we learned as children. And then I took over the band and moved to New York at 20, and I had the band there for 10 years, and I charted with it. I got signed to Verve. We were the Cure's record label. All the big things happen there, and it was a beautiful experience, but sometimes you fall in love and you want to come home and have your baby, so that's what I did.
Let's get into the New York thing, because that's interesting.
Yeah.
I have several friends in New York. My brother lived there for 3 decades plus. And I just, by accident, I was just talking to one person. They're like, oh, my God, you're having Ingrid Lucia on? This person hired you for some big gig up there? And she's like, oh, that was as big as it gets. That's like the cold in the 80s here. And I was like, so I got more intrigued because I had met you, and you gave me the book, and I'm like, okay, and I hadn't had time to really peruse except for a little bit. So last night I'm looking at it, and then I talked to somebody else, just random call from New York. I mean, it was like karma. And I just said, hey, well, my other friend knew. She goes, wow, I was wondering whatever happened to her. Where is she now? But that's wild, man. I mean, like,
she's in my station.
Right. She's coming on, and everybody seemed to know you. Even the Big Chief Mark Boudreaux knew you well. Like, I had him on, and Al Johnson, who sings my favorite Mardi Gras time of all time. It's Carnival time. He's like, Ingrid's a close friend. She's great. So I want people like myself who didn't know much about you to know who you are. So
I
congratulations.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I get around.
You get around. All right.
Yeah. I just, I love getting out. I love meeting people, and it's a small town, and we all pretty much know each other. So if you're here long enough, you're going to meet everybody and everybody's grandma.
That's true. That is true.
One of my chapters in the book is called Messengers from God.
Yeah.
And it's about messages from God that I would get from these ladies that I would meet at like Marshall's or in the parking lot or at the Brown Derby.
Oh, the Brown Derby? Oh, I know the Brown Derby.
And every single one of them was a relation to an old school R&B artist that I love, whether it was Lee Dorsey or Johnny Adams or, Alan Toussaint, the list was endless. And so I put in there thankfulness to them for taking the time to pray for me right before my surgery when I was so sick.
Right.
I had a liver transplant last year, so it's
You look amazing. I mean, no, really, because I saw the pictures from that, and I know
there's the picture with Alan.
Toussaint. I just wanted to bring that up, and I'm glad my producer saw it.
That was an interesting gig, I'll tell you. That was New York City and New Orleans coming together for, they did a fundraiser for Katrina. And so we were there, and all the New Orleanians were dancing in second line, and all the New Yorkers were kind of just like holding their martinis and just like a little shy.
Right.
It was a great night.
Well, let me say, Alan Toussaint.
Antoine Dry.
Yes, I got to meet Toussaint at a friend's 50th birthday a little less than a decade ago. I just moved back, and he knew him, and obviously Toussaint has played with Elvis Costello for a long time.
Yeah.
He's a true New Orleans legend, and he just passed away not that long ago. But what a gentleman this man was. I mean, a great ambassador for our city, and he's lived around in a great
I wrote a chapter about him too. It's called The Majestical Man.
That's a great name for him.
Because everywhere when I grew up playing on the streets, he would walk by and he would check us out. And then when I came home from New York, he'd come to my gig at the Ritz. I was at the Ritz for a year. And then I'd be over at Dorniak's, and there he was in his green Rolls Royce.
Oh my.
No matter where I went, I always ran into him. The post office, I mean, you name it. And so this man who was constantly there, as kind of a guiding force in a way, I really looked up to his standards and his style and his intrinsic way of being a gentleman.
That's it.
And also an ambassador and also a businessman. I mean, whether you want to accept, the royalty situation for the players, that's a different story. But the point is, I really admired him, and when he passed, it hit me like running into a concrete wall, like someone that you always see and always look up to. I went to his funeral at the Orpheum Theater, and it was,
wow.
I'm getting chills right now. It was just constant chills throughout the whole ceremony because he had a love from players that came out.
So much respect that guy had. So many people, because he's one of these guys you take for granted a little bit sometimes while they're here. And he was regal, he was distinguished, and he was a great pianist and a great musician overall. And Elvis Costello worshipped him. Elvis Costello, total different genre.
Me and Elvis Costello had the same entertainment lawyer, Marvin Katz, in New York.
Marvin Katz, okay. I have somebody else that knows Marvin Katz.
Talk about being everywhere. Yeah. And so the Elvis Costello story is that, I was being shopped around by this lawyer to all these labels and, fancy lunches uptown.
What era are we talking about?
This is 99.
99, okay.
99, right around there.
Yeah.
And so I had always wanted to cover Almost Blue. It was a song that he wrote for Chet Baker. Chet Baker died and only had a demo of it. And so
I think we have Almost Blue here. We got something with Almost Blue. I think an album.
So I did an Almost Blue album.
Yeah, right.
And just as I did an Almost Blue album, Diana Krall, who used to come to my shows in New York. She used to come to my shows all the time. We were friendly. And then, the bass player that I broke up with, she hooked up with. And after that, she was like air kisses. So when she married Elvis Costello and put out Almost Blue right before I did, it was just like, what? Yeah. It's a small world how it all intertwines.
And New Orleans is even smaller. Everybody says Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation. Obviously,
this is half.
It's 2. Well,
half.
I was going to say 2. You're going half. But it's you walk out, I know your mom and them.
Yeah.
And, hey, where'd you go to high school? My brother went there. And I'm like, oh, God, I know him too.
All right, so question for you, because people always ask out of town, when we say, where'd you go to high school? They want to know why we ask that question. What's your answer to that?
Well, I say this because I've lived in a lot of places too. D.C. for 4.5 years, Atlanta for 19, sometimes in New York and L.A., and even France a bit. But I'm going to say this. I think what people do here, because they want to immediately size you up on who you are.
They want to gauge.
Yeah, and then they can't but it's weird. You never hear that question anywhere but here. But it's the first question you get here, and I noticed it when I came back, and I noticed, you know, I tell them where I went to grade school. I said, you judging me there? When I went to middle school.
Right.
I said, then I tell high school. But what's your theory on it? Because I think they immediately size you up and they want to put you in a corner about what you may
I think
be.
it's a couple of things.
Okay.
I think it's that, you know, they're trying to find a way to commune and bond and connect. And that's the
true
connecting
too,
factor.
yes.
Oh, do we go to the same high school? You know, number one. Number two, it's a social status quo, you know, interrogation in a way like, oh, right away you know what status they're of, you know, what they're made of.
That's what I was trying to say right there.
Thirdly, I feel like a lot of us haven't gone to college. So, you know, in a way it's like, oh, where'd you go? I went to Yale and Harvard. Oh, no, I went to Warren Easton. How about you?
Warren Easton, you, baby.
Yeah, Warren Easton, you know. So, you know, I think it's just a way of, you know, connecting as a community in a way, and it's a beautiful thing.
It's New Orleans. And,
it's a New Orleans
I'm going to say
thing,
one thing about New Orleans. You've been all around the world, but I mean, when I was in France for a while, or anywhere, LA, New York, it could be DC. When you hear somebody from New Orleans, and you could be at a party and not have any connection. They might be from Chalmette and you're from Uptown, or you're from the Ninth Ward. You immediately bond immediately. You go, then you gravitate, and then all of a sudden y'all are talking like you're best friends. And that's what I love about New Orleans.
That's so true. I was in Grand Central Station one summer day, and I had gotten a bottle of beer and a sandwich, and I was waiting for the train to come in, and a policeman comes over to me, and he's like, let me see your driver's license, and he sees Louisiana, and he looks at me, he's like, oh, he's like, okay. He said, next time, no glass bottles of liquor. Like, you know, I didn't even think of it, and he just smiled it off.
I didn't show up for work my first time Mardi Gras in D.C. because I thought the entire country was off for Mardi Gras, and I worked for a Louisiana senator, and he's like, where are you? I said, it's Mardi Gras, I'm watching it on TV, and they're like, no, that's only in New Orleans and Louisiana.
It's like, what are you, 5 years old?
And then when I told stories about, when drinking age was 18 back then, and we were the religious family on the block, but we still drank. And my point is, I told stories about how we drank in high school. They were like horns growing out of my head. They looked at me. I'm like, wait, is that not everybody? Anyway, real quick before I got to go, I want to talk about the story in this book about you had your transplant, but more importantly, you became sober. And the story, you were with the Squirrel Nut Zippers, and that was a fascinating story. It's sad, brought a tear to my eye. But you know what happened at the airport. In a nutshell, just talk about how this has changed your life. You got arrested, right?
I did.
And because you were drunk, that's it. You were drunk at the airport.
No, 30 hours.
We've all been there and not been drunk,
not been arrested. Been there? I don't know.
Well, no, not been arrested, but we've all had drinks at the airport. My point is this: is that tell us how it changed your life.
How it's changed my life?
Yeah.
Having the transplant?
Well, having the whole thing, because you said the sober thing, because you seem like a super happy person.
I am a happy person overall. And you know, a lot of my happiness, the reason I started drinking so much is because a lot of my happiness disappeared. You know, I had a lot of kind of utopian dreams. I always thought if you worked really hard and you did the right thing and you had, you know, right moral status and all that moral, you know, compass and all, and, you know, I went full force to New York, 20 years old with no money. I started a band, I succeeded, I charted, I traveled the world, you know, and with a lot of labor and dreams come true, right?
Yes.
But so with that kind of idea, you know, you come back home and all of a sudden you're doing, you know, pretty sucky gigs for the money to pay your utility bills. And your dreams just kind of go out the window, and then you start drinking like, you know what, I refuse to ever put on a show and not try my best. And watching all, you know, all these people at all these shows just drinking all the time, not even really caring.
Right.
You know, it really hurt me bad. And then my husband at the time, you know, he was very kind of passive aggressive, and so I started letting things just kind of squash my light.
Yeah, right,
you know,
right,
and
right,
starting
right.
to feel low and down and stuffing it, and so I would just start drinking, you know, a third a bottle, a half a bottle, and you know, a whole bottle a day for years actually after I got kicked out of my marriage. And you know, I lost everything. I lost my daughter for 5 years. I lost the home that I basically supported. He didn't have a job. And my point is that, you know, I let so many things happen to me because I had hoped things would change for the better.
Sure.
And so there I am, you know, drinking my life away.
Did you realize it at the time? I mean, because it's hard to see when you're in the middle of it.
I didn't realize it until, well, I had been throwing up blood for a couple of months before I ended up in the ICU, and I was kind of ignoring it in a way. But I mean, I realized that when my leg exploded, I had a seizure, and I ended up in ICU for 10 days. Like, that's when I really, you know, had to make a choice. Like, do I want to live or do I want to die?
And this was like 5, 6, 7 years ago?
No, this is 3 years ago.
This is just 3 years ago, and look at you now. The transplant came not not right after. So
you have to be sober for a year.
Liver, right?
And so liver
right.
transplant.
Yeah.
And so Ochsner was great. The New Orleans Musicians Clinic. I mean, they're family, and they take care of all musicians, and they're irreplaceable. So the people that really invested in me, Anders Osborne was the one who got me into rehab in
tremendous
Nashville.
human being Anders is. Yes.
Anders got me into rehab in Nashville, and Music Cares and the Grammys paid for it. So all this labor and love and toil, to freaking invest in me.
There are a lot of great musicians in
At the end of the day,
yeah.
The whole thing that it comes down to is a lot of performers become that because, they're afraid to be who they are. They're afraid they're not getting what they need or want from being, who they are. So they come up with this alter ego. And when I got out of rehab, they were like, we're doing this for you, not because you play music, not because you have to please people. And when that happened, it's totally changed me. It changed me because, I wasn't letting me be me. I was trying to just try so hard to please everybody. And so I have been working on trying to not do that, but really authentically, be there, be supportive, be helpful. I mean, I never expected so many people to reach out to me with their own problems.
Isn't that amazing?
And
How
I
you
really
realize you're a light for others now.
and it's a drop in the barrel. So the New Orleans Musicians Clinic believes in me, takes me under their wing. And because of that, I'm getting better. And because I'm getting better, others are seeing it and they're reaching out because they want to get better, and it's really truly a beautiful thing. And the book is a coming of age story.
Yes.
It's a coming of age story of a young street performer. It's a coming of age story again now as a rebirth in sobriety and having a second chance at my life because I could have died. I mean, this liver transplant, there were people waiting for livers for a long time and I didn't have time to wait. So
this book is
it was
raw.
pretty amazing.
And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna say this again now that you've said this.
Yeah.
Get this book, and I'm not trying to pimp the book out by any means, but this book, I couldn't stop reading it, and I needed to go to sleep. I had to wake up to the show. But the fact is it's like I said, it's well written, and it's just so honest, and the story you told is times 10 in here. Like the prose is really, I felt the
lot
visual.
of content in there.
Well,
my life. I mean, I have a poem in there called "What These Eyes Have Seen."
Where can we get this book?
You can order it from me directly.
Okay.
So if you just either go on Facebook a message, or if you do my email, ingrid.l.marshall@gmail.com.
Okay.
But it will be available more widespread.
But you said on your Instagram too. That might be easy.
Yeah, any of them.
It's okay if you go Instagram.
Any social media
they can
platform.
private message you
Absolutely.
too. Also cool.
Yes, thank you.
I urge you seriously. I mean, this is a great woman. She's done a lot of great things in New Orleans and for New Orleans, and now she's helping others.
I love New Orleans. I write so much. It's a love story to New Orleans as well because let's be honest, like New Orleans is such a beautiful, beautiful encapsulated world of all this cacophony of wild banshee cowboys going through the town and doing what they want to do. Where else in this country or world can you do that? Like cops twerking on, Kermit's bar.
Yes.
And like
or cops and horses downtown doing spins on,
this is what
this is the most unique place.
Know what you're gonna
I do have to go, but this is a crazy book that talks about, this is what I love about you. You hop around, so it's not, you don't get bored with like, oh, we're going through the progression of your life.
How does
you jump around and tell stories.
I've been everywhere. I mean, there's stories on Mexico, stories on New York, stories on, movie stars and street people, and I like to take in as much as possible and use it, incorporate it in my songwriting, and my thought process to be a better person and try to be more worldly. So, there you go. And I'd also like to mention my mother has written a book as well called The Baja Journey. The Baja. And it's about her adventures with my father before he started his work group, which I was raised in his work group. So, yeah, it's a double package.
You have a light inside of you, and it's evident.
Thanks. You do too. What are you talking about? It takes one to know one.
This is we give gifts, by the way, Task Performance, and you're wearing black, and I know 4/5 of your wardrobe is black because I read that last night. True story, right?
True story.
There it is. So there you got black right there, and that's actually by accident.
And do you know what? I don't own a plain black T-shirt, so this will be perfect.
This will be the most comfortable T-shirt you've ever worn.
I'll wear it for Jazz Fest when I play on May 5th.
Hey, nice gift certificate.
Thank you.
That's at Chez de la Chaise on Maple. They have great food. I ate there not long ago. Phenomenal.
Oh, my mom just had a hip replacement. I'll take her for dinner.
Bring her, and you're going to love it.
Thank you.
What a great show. I got to thank everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buy the book, everybody, please.
Thank you.
By the way, we're going to have so many great guests coming up. I've got this list of people that now their seasons are starting to end. Basketball's about to end. Basketball college is about to end. Pros are coming. We're going to have a lot of great guests coming up this spring, but I got to thank the ones we just had. How about Brett Simpson and Donald Reyes? Give Loyola some love. Start supporting that team as well. That is another New Orleans team in addition to UNO and Tulane that we need to support here in the Crescent City as well. And also my man Joe from Louisiana Derby. Get out there on Saturday. That's the last day. The fairgrounds is open until Thanksgiving, so get on out. We'll see you next week. Also, Will Logan and Alex, and of course Jim and Ryan. I want to thank them all at WLAE. We'll see you once again on Primetime Sports.